Welcome to The Explainer. All right, we are jumping straight into this today because we're unpacking a truly massive update in the world of AI security. OpenAI just threw down a huge policy shift, and it directly impacts developers, security researchers, and honestly, anyone who's watching the future of AI governance. They've put a $50,000 bounty on the table. The goal? Breaking the biosafety guardrails of their absolute most advanced frontier models. So we're going to break down the mechanics of this program, see how it totally contrasts with other tech giants, and figure out what this means for you if you're building with these tools. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the 50K universal jailbreak. Second, defining the biosafety challenge. Third, shifting to GPT-5.6. Fourth, OpenAI versus Google bounties. Fifth, new rules for developers. And lastly, how researchers participate. Let's dive in. Section 1, the 50K universal jailbreak. Okay, let's talk about the sheer financial scale here. Bug bounties? They are definitely not new, but look at that number, $50,000. OpenAI literally doubled their top reward for this specific vulnerability, taking it from 25 grand straight to 50. To put that into perspective, their original GPT-5.5 biosafety program offered anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000 for your standard violations. But this new $50,000 tier, it is exclusively reserved for universal jailbreaks that totally defeat the biosafety guardrails. It's a massive signal to the whole industry. They are prioritizing biological risks above almost every other form of general model abuse right now. Section 2, defining the biosafety challenge. So let's cut through the jargon for a second. What exactly are researchers getting paid 50 grand to break? The biosafety challenge is essentially a predefined filter. Think of it as a barricade. Its one and only job is to block any user prompts that try to trick the AI into generating instructions for dangerous pathogens or dual-use biological research. We're not talking about standard spam or offensive text here, right? We're talking about stopping the AI from literally handing over a blueprint for bioweapons. The model has to be smart enough to recognize a highly technical query about a pathogen and just shut it down. Now, here's the really crucial part. OpenAI is absolutely not paying $50,000 for some lucky one-off parlor trick. They want a universal jailbreak, and that means a systemic bypass. It means you haven't just confused the model with a clever riddle, you've actually uncovered a fundamental architectural flaw. This bypass has to work no matter how you format the input, no matter how long the context is, and it has to cut right through any tool calling layers. Basically, you have to prove the biosafety filter is fundamentally broken across the board. Section 3, shifting to GPT-5.6. So this program is going through a pretty major evolution. It's transitioning from just a temporary release cycle bounty into a permanent, ongoing defense layer for their frontier models. Right now, testing covers both GPT-5.5 and GPT-5.6, but there is a very strict cutoff date coming in hot, July 27th, 2026. On that exact date, all testing for GPT-5.5 completely wraps up. After July 27th, the entire scope of this highly lucrative program shifts exclusively to GPT-5.6. If you're a researcher, you really need to know this timeline, because any future scope changes are only going to be communicated to the registered researchers playing within these specific bounds. Section 4, OpenAI versus Google bounties. To really get why OpenAI's program is such a huge deal, we kind of have to zoom out and look at the broader industry. Let's compare OpenAI's highly specialized approach with another giant, Google. So Google recently updated their AI Vulnerability Reward Program, their VRP. Their base rewards max out at $20,000, and if you get some quality and novelty multipliers, you might hit a maximum of $30,000. But look at where they focus. Google is rewarding high-impact security issues, things like rogue actions that modify victim data or sensitive data exfiltration. Crucially, Google explicitly excludes jailbreaks, direct prompt injection, and alignment issues from their VRP. Contrast that with OpenAI, a $50,000 max in a dedicated track focused entirely on the exact thing Google excludes, jailbreaks, and specifically biosafety jailbreaks. They're completely isolating biological risk into its own high-paying severity class. And this quote right here, it perfectly captures the philosophical divide we're seeing in the industry. Why does Google exclude jailbreaks? Well, in their own words, addressing content-based issues requires long-term cross-disciplinary efforts, at odds with the VRP's goal of providing timely rewards. Basically, Google wants users to report these issues via an in-product feedback tool so their internal teams can study the trends over time. They don't think it fits a fast-paced bounty model. But OpenAI, They are doing the exact opposite, throwing massive sums of cash at a dedicated track just to find these bypasses. It just goes to show how much of an industry anomaly this biosafety bounty really is. They want these vulnerabilities found right now, and they are willing to pay top dollar for systemic breakthroughs. Section 5. New rules for developers. All right, let's take a more pragmatic turn here. What does all this actually mean if you are a developer building daily application pipelines? Well, consider this your reality check. The mere existence of a $50,000 bounty proves that this biosafety challenge is no longer just some optional safety layer you can toggle on or off. It is a hard constraint, deeply embedded right into the API and the playground. If your app handles biological data, clinical research queries, or synthetic biology workflows, you absolutely have to account for these guardrails right from the design phase. You have to treat this filter as a non-negotiable compliance boundary. If you're routing user input through GPT-5.5 or 5.6, you must structurally assume the model is going to actively reject or sanitize any instructions it even thinks might be dual-use biological information. You've got to plan your whole architecture around that friction. Section 6. How researchers participate. Finally, let's pivot to these security researchers tuning in. You're looking at that $50,000 bounty, and you want to know exactly how to get your hands on it. Well, first things first, the setup is super exclusive now. It's a private invite-only track. You need either a prior application or a direct invite to even access the testing environments. Now, if you previously submitted to the GPT 5.5 program, you're golden. Past applicants are automatically included without having to reapply. This shift to a private track, it's highly intentional. It's entirely designed to cut out the noise of low-effort spam, so they can increase high-signal targeted vulnerability reports from serious researchers. So if you do have access, here's your playbook. Step 1, set up your environment using the official Python client. Literally just pip install OpenAI and authenticate with your API key. And hey, keep those keys scoped to the minimum required permissions, obviously, to prevent data leakage. Step 2, you access the controlled GPT 5.5 or 5.6 instances through the designated API endpoints or the private playground. Step 3 is where the real heavy lifting happens. You've got to systematically grid test parameters. A universal jailbreak almost never works on a single parameter set. You need automated test harnesses to iterate across different temperature, top P, and max tokens configurations to map out exactly how that filter triggers. And finally, step 4, submit your findings through the Bounty platform. You have to meticulously document every single bypass attempt, the exact prompt, model version, system instructions, and include crystal clear reproduction steps, an impact assessment, and recommended mitigations, the whole shebang. Which brings us to the end of our explainer and leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. We're seeing Google handle this internally, while OpenAI is out here crowdsourcing biological defense with massive payouts. So as these frontier models get exponentially more capable, are dedicated, highly funded biosafety bounties like this going to become the mandatory standard across the entire AI industry? It's a crazy look into the rapidly escalating stakes of AI safety. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this deep dive. And whatever you do, keep your eyes on that July 2026 cutoff.